Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Holly Wharton. I've been an entrepreneur since 1999, and I know firsthand how difficult it can be to build a business without the right mindset. This is a podcast for those of us who struggle with showing up in our business with confidence and authenticity, who resist taking big action because of fears and doubts, who know deep down that it's possible to create something bigger, and yet you're not. This podcast combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business more easily in a way that feels aligned. This podcast features solo shows with me and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world, including my monthly co-hosted episodes with Joe Casey. My goal is to help you grow your business more quickly and easily by transforming your mindset. For me, mindset work is a lifelong practice, and I want to help you make a habit out of mindset work. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, let's get into this week's episode. Hello, this is Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another co-hosted episode with the fabulous Joe Casey. Today, we talk about business boundaries, which is such an important topic, and yet I don't see people talking about it often enough. This is a kind of extended episode, much longer than our usual 30 minutes. And that wasn't planned. We decided that we had a lot to say and that there's a lot that needs to be considered when it comes to boundaries. Our last co-hosted episode was on resilience, and this one really complements that one, because when your boundaries are clear and strong, then it makes it so much easier to be resilient in business. So, what are we going to talk about? You will learn what are boundaries and why do we need them, the role that courage plays when it comes to setting and upholding boundaries, what types of boundaries you need in terms of managing time and energy, how to set boundaries to balance work time and personal time, how to set boundaries for cancellations, refunds, late arrivals, and no-shows, how to get clear on what you will and won't do in your business, how to get clear on who you'll work with and who you won't, how to get clear on what you're willing to debate and what you won't, how to set boundaries around pricing, including pay what you want pricing, what to give for free and what to charge for, how to deal with boundary pushers, you know what we mean by that. We've all had to deal with those at one point or another, and the mindset stuff that can get in the way of setting and upholding clear boundaries. I am super excited about this extended episode. I hope you find it useful and I hope you enjoy it. So that's all for now.
Hi, welcome. This is Joe Casey and I'm here with Holly Wharton. We're here for our joint monthly podcast episode. And today we're going to be talking about boundaries, which is one of those, I think it's one of those words that we use a lot in the coaching industry. I think there is some confusion over what it actually means, but I do know that there is also a heck of a lot of, I don't know why I said heck of a lot, I said a hell of a lot there. I'm sort of feeling quite prudish today. A hell of a lot of resistance and feelings that come up when it comes to setting boundaries. So as is often the case, this was inspired by a very kind of animated conversation that Holly and I had when we met up in person the week before last, which is something nice that we like to do now and again. And so we're going to talk about boundaries, what they are, what they can do for your business, what some of the difficulties are that we have with them, and just all of that good stuff. Why you need to get your head around having good, strong, kind boundaries in your business if you want to grow it and stay grounded and not end up working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Does that sound, is that, have I introduced that?
I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so should we just explain a little bit how the origin of this conversation came up?
Do you know, I don't even remember.
I as I said that, I thought, I don't remember the first thing, but I do remember that we had a really animated discussion about it when we were in London over lunch and then co-working for the afternoon. Yay. Which was very fun. And
should we start fresh?
Yeah, we'll edit that bit out. Oh, Lordy.
Okay. Should we just, your introduction was really good. Should we just then launch into like, what are boundaries and why do you need them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
How did this conversation came up? I have no idea. No, neither have I.
But it was such a great conversation. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I wish you were there. Yeah. Yeah, not great listening. Okay.
Wish you were there because maybe you'd remember it, you know? Okay.
So, Holly, when you hear the term boundaries, what comes up for you? What's your kind of definition of boundaries?
I think this is a really kind of tough thing to explain. It's like what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do in all the different areas of my business. It's like what's okay for me and what's not okay. And of course, that's going to be totally different for everyone. But I think a lot of people don't get clear on their boundaries. And so they have a lot of ickiness and murkiness in their business because they don't have those clear boundaries and guidelines of what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. How would you define boundaries?
In a similar way, I think they're almost like the gatekeepers of our time and our behaviour, and also around what behaviour and requests on our time and our energy that we're willing to allow. So I almost think of them as a bit like a gate that you put up, because it can be really easy if you have too loose boundaries to end up just saying yes to everything. Now I know there's a whole philosophy about that, but and by the way, if you're just starting out in your business and you're thinking, no, I'll say yes to anything because I have so much time. And I can remember being in that position too. But there will then come a point, I promise you, where you cannot fit in everything that you kind of have on your plate, or the requests that you have, and still earn a living and still have a life. So I think some of it is time-based, but I also think some of it is the type of behaviour and the type of activities and the type of energy that you kind of allow into your world, if you like. Boundaries are always really interesting because I definitely know that in my life and my business there are areas where my boundaries could do with tweaking and tightening up, but there are also areas where I could do with my boundaries being a bit looser and coming down a bit.
Interesting.
I think there's something to do with being an introvert and being having a belief that I'm not very sociable. It takes a long time to get to know people. Means that sometimes I don't give people a chance. It takes me a long time to kind of trust people or ask for help and things like that. So the boundaries can it's a continuum. You can have areas where your boundaries are almost a bit too strong, and then areas where they are too loose, which I think is the area where most of us are operating when it comes to having issues around boundaries. It's probably because our boundaries are just a little bit too loose, or just not where we need them to be.
And why do you think we need boundaries in business? It's not just an issue of how much time do I have and how am I willing to spend that time. It's also, as you said, an energy issue. Yeah. How am I willing to invest my energy?
I think boundaries in business, it's our business, and we have certain things that we need to do to generate income, but also, as your business grows and develops, you structure your business in a way that works for you. And that may mean that I only work with certain type of clients. That may mean that, I say this package includes 6 one-hour sessions, for example. If I then go over that boundary of the 6 one-hour sessions, or I have a client who's emailing me 3 pages of notes every day, then that eats into the time and the energy that I have for other things in my business. So it's really easy to find that you are exhausted by the end of the day, but have that feeling of, I've got very little to show for it because I've not been able to get on with the things that, generate me income, pay my rent, generate new clients, or just keep me happy and well, which is we talked on our last episode about resilience.
Yeah.
In terms of resilience, having strong boundaries is really important.
I completely agree, because otherwise you don't have the strength and the energy to practice resilience.
Yeah, exactly. So how about you? Why do you think that boundaries are so important to have in a business?
Basically those two things, time and energy. I have limited energy. And especially when it comes to interacting with other people. So yesterday evening in my Facebook group, Amber de la Garza, who's a productivity expert, did a video talking about productivity and that kind of thing. And she said one of the things that she loves is, client calls, because working with people really charges her up. And so she can do like 6 or 7 calls in a day. And I was like, oh my God, 3 is my maximum, because I'm not, like, I love working with my clients. It's absolutely amazing, but we're doing really deep energy work. And I can't handle more than 3 90-minute client sessions a day. I can't handle it. I know, because I'm burnt out when I try. So that's my limit. And because I have limited energy reserves, everyone does, but I think some people have more or less energy, and some people's energy is managed differently from others. So for me specifically, I'm very, very careful about how I use my energy and how I invest it in the different activities.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, that's something that I winced when 6 clients
I know.
a day. I mean, I can remember when I first came out of coach training, them kind of giving us a sample, one of those sheets that you fill in about, well, how many sessions do you do each week and how much money could you earn type thing. That's the thing when we all come out and think, oh my God, I'm going to be making £100,000 within 3 weeks. Yeah. It doesn't quite happen. But it was set up with, like, you would like doing a call at 9 and then you have a 10-minute break and then a call at 10:15, and then it was like 8 calls in a day to be. And I was like, oh my God, no, I can't. My absolute maximum is 4 calls in a day, and I know that if I do that, then I'm going to be, really tired. And I do find them energizing in one way, but it's also very draining.
Yeah, and I also have my calendar set up so that I have a minimum, well, and half an hour in between calls, no matter what the call is. If it's a discovery call or whether it's a client call, I do not have less than a half an hour between calls, because I need that time to kind of wind down from the previous call and get ready for the next call.
That's a really good idea. And that reminds me of the time that you told me. So, Joe, why don't you just block out an hour for lunch each day in your calendar? And I was like, that had never occurred to me. I think it was one of those days where I'd kind of go, somehow I've just done like 3 calls this morning and I didn't have time for lunch. I think we were meeting in the afternoon. Now he's eating my sandwich. It was like 4:00 in the afternoon or something. You're like, So, I mean, that's a boundary. You set
it is.
That that I will not work during these hours. It's really easy. And again, I'm aware if you're really early in your business, you're thinking, no, I will work whatever hours available, because that's how I was initially. I'll have every evening free just in case a client wants to come. But if you want to have a family life and a healthy equilibrium and resilience and all of that, and be able to show up well for your clients, then you need to put some limits and some boundaries around your time.
But I think it's interesting what you say. When you start out, you want to be available to everyone at all times, and maybe that's worth giving it a try at the beginning to see what are your best times for working, because some people are more focused in the morning, some people are more focused in the evening, afternoon. Like, that might be worth having really loose boundaries in the beginning, just so you can see what works for you and what doesn't, because sometimes you've got to figure out these boundaries through trial and error.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think boundaries are fluid is the wrong word. They develop and they evolve. You don't want fluid boundaries. You want solid boundaries, but
open to change.
Yes, definitely. And also, you can go into a relationship thinking, okay, yeah, these boundaries work, and it's only as the relationship develops you kind of think, no, I need to be putting some firmer things in place. So for example, say I sell a package to a client and it's X number of sessions. Initially, I had said to all of my clients that you would have unlimited email between sessions. And I had to change that when, I did get somebody who was sending me 3 pages of notes pretty much every day. And then if they were in a different time zone to me as well. And then if I didn't respond within a certain number of hours, usually when I was asleep, they would send me another one packet. Did you get my last email? And just energetically, that was like, oh, I would be waking up and be really like, oh my God, there's another email from her in the morning. So I had to go back and renegotiate those boundaries. And now I have in my contract that you have, you get like 1 email exchange between client sessions, because, we tend to have client sessions every 2 weeks. Happy to have 1 email exchange in between that. Any more than that is, I just don't have the time for, I don't have the bandwidth for, and so that there's a boundary on that. But it was only after having that experience that I need, exactly.
And I think that's a very important thing, is it's trial and error. You're going to have some crappy experiences in the beginning because you're finding out what your boundaries are that are right for you. So there's going to be some times where you're like, oh God, that's awful. Great. Make use of that by creating a new boundary so that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, exactly. So have you got any times when you've had to increase a boundary or strengthen a boundary? I'm just curious, particularly in your business.
Yeah, I'm sure there have. I'm thinking in terms of clients, I tend to attract clients that are not very clingy or need a lot of hand-holding, which is good because I'm not the hand-holding kind of person. So I think I've been really, really lucky in that respect. But I have people, this is weird to say this, but people have on various occasions praised me for my clear boundaries.
That's good.
I know. I think perhaps I do set up boundaries and make them clear without really realizing it. I don't know. Like when you book into my Acuity calendar, you get this whole thing talking about like basically boundaries. And yeah, so I guess I think I'm really clear up front, because the times that I have chosen to, like someone's canceled at the last minute or something because they've had something come up and I've said, look, if you're not in a good headspace, let's not do this call right now, let's rebook. And they've been really pleasantly surprised because they know that my boundaries are super clear and they're doing something that's like not in the rules, but I've chosen to say, look, you're not in the right space to do this call right now. Let's do it when you can do it. So I think I have very clear boundaries, and I think that's partly because in my first business there were no boundaries. I mean, it was awful. So I was just working all kinds of hours, crazy hours, and I had a lot of pressure from my business partner to, as you said, respond to emails very quickly. So I think that is partly what made me so good about setting boundaries and really clear boundaries and upholding the boundaries in this business, because I've already lived my boundary lesson in my first business.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's just the way that we seem to have to learn these things the hard way.
Yeah, that's how it is. So we've talked a lot about client calls and emails and that kind of thing. So let's talk about different types of boundaries so that people know what things they need to get clear on. So one of the things is timing. So finishing client calls on time, not going overtime, or are you going to? When are you going to do client calls? How many are you going to do a day? What kinds of emails are you going to allow in between sessions? What's your time frame for answering emails? And general work stuff. So in terms of timing, what other kinds of boundaries do you think people need to be setting up?
So I'm trying to think in my kind of coaching agreement. So I have stuff in there around, it's their responsibility to call me. show up on time. If you don't show up on time, we're still going to finish at the same time. So
Yep.
I have a reschedule. I will reschedule an appointment once with 24 hours notice.
Mm-hmm.
If not, you lose the session, or there's stuff around. Oh, then this is another one that I learned the hard way. I don't know if I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but one of my very first paying clients, who was paying me like a pin, so it was something like £30 for 6 sessions or something, turned up for his first coaching session, and he was driving in his car, and he was talking really fast. And I'm thinking, I don't quite know how to handle this. And I did kind of, after a few minutes, kind of gather my courage and say, we need to do this call when you are able to fully focus on it. Not when you're driving. So when you're not going to be interrupted when you're somewhere static. So I don't know if you want to pull the car over. Oh, no, I need to get to a meeting. And then we had another exchange. I think it might have been the last session, or it might have been via email. I can't remember. It's a long time ago now. He basically admitted to the fact that he'd had a few cheeky lines of cocaine before the call. I was like, that had never occurred to me in a million years that somebody would do that. So,
well, it's a great way to turn up for your coaching session, really focused and energized and ready to go, don't you think?
I guess so. So whilst I don't explicitly say, please do not be high or drugs,
please abstain from.
But I do say, please make sure that you are in a position where you can focus fully on the call without interruptions.
It's also dangerous, even if you're not high on cocaine, if you're driving while having a coaching call, that's like, how are you focusing on driving?
Yes, exactly. Not great. But the thing that I want to kind of mention around that is when I said, I screwed up all my courage and said to him, because I do think that for a lot of us, there is an element of courage needed when we're first setting out boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not socialized to do them, not socialized to have good boundaries. We are socialized predominantly, our audience is predominantly women, but we are socialized to be amenable, to be helpful, to be compassionate, and so the pushback that we get internally is, what will people think of me if I say no?
Yeah.
And this comes up time and time again. And it comes up for me sometimes too, around what's stopping me from saying this isn't acceptable, or no, this doesn't work for me. I think is that fear of, will people like me? Will I get called the B word? Will I get, and I think that is something that it's worth just unpacking in yourself around, that. Brene Brown has this great phrase that she says, you have a choice, and I choose the moment of discomfort, which is the discomfort of setting that boundary and saying to someone, no, that doesn't work for me, no, I can't do that, as opposed to hours, weeks, a lifetime of resentment and exhaustion because you don't have the boundaries. And so it's around thinking about, so what works for me and my business, and going into it knowing that, this is my business. These boundaries help me to be able to show up in the best possible way for my clients.
Yes.
And without those boundaries, you will very, very quickly burn out. If you go over your allotted time on a call because the client keeps on talking, and you feel a bit bad, and you don't want to stop them mid-flow, and you don't want to draw it to a close, and it goes 15 minutes over, and that runs into your next call, and you end up showing up late for your next call, or you've not had sufficient break to recharge, to go to the bathroom, to get a cup of tea, then that's going to have a knock-on effect on your ability to deliver for your clients. So actually having good boundaries is kind.
Yes, it is. It is. And it gives people a clear idea of what you expect as the coach and what is expected of them.
Yeah.
So it just makes everything clear and brings it out into the open and puts it on the table where they can see it.
Yeah, there's a real safety there when you know what the boundaries are, when you know what the rules are. I mean, one of the theories around kids and what makes kids very anxious is parents who don't have clear boundaries and expectations that are communicated to the kids. And I think as adults that, that applies the same. Things like pay what you want or pay from the hard prices.
I hate that.
So I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, the first group program I did pay what you want. But what I did is I put some parameters in there.
Yeah, I think if you do pay what you want, but you have some parameters, like this is worth this. Some people, might choose to pay between this and this range, like some kind of guidance, then it works. But otherwise, if you're just like pay whatever the hell you want, people are going to be like, I don't even know. And there have been times where I haven't bought someone's thing because I'm so pissed off by their pay what you want prices. I don't want to be seen as cheap, but I don't know how much they think this thing is valued at.
Yeah, you also don't want to be the fool who paid, 3 times what everyone else paid. So yeah. So strong boundaries and clear boundaries.
Yeah.
Really kind. So let's talk about free versus paid.
Yes.
And because you were sharing a story about something that went on a Facebook group recently, which I thought was really interesting, really valuable, especially for a lot of us, as we trying to navigate this whole kind of, what will people think of me, and because I think in our audiences, most people are healers, and they do have a gift that they want to be giving to people. We don't want to be the money grabbing, just out to exploit people, but at the same time, it can sometimes be tricky to know where the lines are with that.
Yeah, and the reality is we're living in a real world where things do cost money. So this is a really interesting story, and I'm not going to name names because this was in closed Facebook groups, but a woman I know who's an author who wrote a book and has a Facebook group dedicated to that book to kind of work through and discuss the themes from the book, mentioned that she was launching a new program that she's coming out next year. It was reasonably priced. I mean, it was a considerable investment, but it was very reasonably priced considering that it was a year-long program. And someone complained in the group and said, I'm really sick of these authors who write their book and they use their platform to sell their stuff and make money. And I'm sick of this, and I see it time and time again, and I'm leaving. And she left the group. So the following day, the woman, the author in question, comes in and she says, I'm really sorry that I couldn't have a dialogue with this woman because she left the group. But way back when, you could do an exchange with people and say, well, I'm going to give you some healing, and then you give me some carrots from your garden, and that's really lovely. But in this day and age, I can't pay for my mortgage, my rent, my, whatever with carrots. Like, money is the exchange that our society has agreed on. So that's what we need to make. So, I need to charge money for my services because it involves a significant investment of my time. All the work that I've been doing my entire life has led up to this thing that I'm teaching now. And then a new person in the group started complaining and saying, I'm really sick that all of this stuff is aimed at women who are middle class and up, and people who can't afford it don't have any help. And someone else said, like, look, this free group is what's for you. Like, you're getting help and support here and community here. Like, this is the free thing that is for you. The expensive stuff or the higher price stuff is for the people who can pay that. But you have a thing. It's this thing which is free. And a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people, I don't know if it's because we have so much free information available online now that people expect everything to be free.
I do think so that excuse me, there's the whole thing online for a long time was the give away your best stuff for free, and I think that whilst I'm a big believer in I love to provide free stuff, if we're not clear about that, it becomes a bit fuzzy for people, and you can suddenly get this. I'm a bit brought up short by the fact that suddenly I'm being asked to pay for this. Yeah,
it trains people to think that your stuff is free.
Yeah, and so I I always appreciate it when people are really super clear about what this is and what it isn't. So, for example, I do free coffee chats, but they are just, you will meet me, we will have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in our respective offices, and we will have a chat. I won't be giving you business advice necessarily, although sometimes I can't help myself. But it's a chance for me to get to know you. It's the purpose of this is to build a relationship with you. Sometimes I do, and maybe that will lead at some point down the line for ways we can collaborate, or maybe it be clients, maybe not. But I'm really clear about that. I do not sell on those calls. But then there are others where if you sign up for an intake call with me, the expectation is this is a call, and I'm very deliberate with that. This is a call for you to find out more about whether I'm the right person to help you, with a view to us potentially working together.
Yeah.
So it's very explicit about what it's for. What frustrates me sometimes, and what has freaked me out in the past, is when people are offering free calls and you're not too sure, well, is this genuinely a free call? Or so I like to be really clear. I have had times when people haven't respected that boundary. So I don't know if I told you this, but I once had the same week, 3 people who were all working with the same coach, all signed up for intake calls with me. And the same thing happened. And I didn't know that they all worked with the same coach until the 3rd person. It was like, oh, you work with this person too? And they all ended the call in the same way. Thank you so much. That's been so interesting. I won't waste any more of your time. And this is before we've even got to the point of, what do you think? Let's have a discussion. How would that? And then they rang up, and it was the same almost line that they used.
Oh, how weird. I wonder if that was something that coach was telling them to sign up for people's discovery calls or intake calls so that they could learn how lots of different people do it.
Well, I was talking to my coach at the time. She went, that's a tactic some people teach. It is just that thing to sign up. And I felt furious and violated. It was like, that's my time.
I know.
That is...
But what's the purpose of just signing up for people's intake calls?
I don't know. I presume to see, how other people do it. Ew. But then I've also had that, when people go, just sign up for a free call with me, and no pressure, no sell, no anything. You kind of think, okay, well, I do want to sign up, and I do want to find out a little bit more about you and all of that. And then it's so pressure all the time in the whole thing. Ew. And again, it feels like a violation because it's like you've broken the. So having clear boundaries, having clearly laying it out.
Yes.
Everybody has the expectation and the safety there, and that's how you develop trust.
Yes, I completely agree. So I do the same thing as you. I have discovery calls, which are the intake calls, but I'm thinking I need to rename them. And then I have the cup of tea or coffee on Skype. Yeah. And when I advertise the cup of tea and coffee, I clearly say, this is not a sales call. This is just a conversation on Skype.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very, very clear about that. So yeah, I think that's really important because people know what to expect. So in terms of boundaries, I feel like there are a few more things that I want us to cover. So work time versus lifetime. Like, what's your work schedule going to be? Like, what hours of the day and what days of the week are you going to choose to work? And when are you going to cut that off so that you can live your life and have your personal time?
Yeah, again, it's one of those things that when you're just starting out and you're kind of, you look at your calendar and it's just empty and you're just like, oh my God, I'll keep it open for forever. And I did that. And I got to the point where I was working 5 evenings a week because I'm in the UK. I would say probably about 2/3 of my clients are in the North America or Canada.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, having evening slots available is really useful for them because it means they don't have to get up at, like 5-6 o'clock in the morning, depending on where in the country they are. But it meant that I just wasn't seeing my husband or my kids, and I was exhausted. And then I'd be starting calls with my UK clients at like 9:30 the next day. Ooh. So it may be that, there were some nights I wasn't finishing till 10 p.m. And then I'd have a call the next day at 9:30. It was crazy making.
Yeah, it feels like you're never turning off.
Yeah, exactly. And so had to put some boundaries in around that. So now I work 3 evenings a week. And when I don't do calls before 10 a.m. in the morning. I only do a certain number of calls each week. And that's the beauty of having an online scheduler.
Yes,
you can set your hours and your parameters in there.
It's a really clear way to set your boundaries.
Yeah.
Now, the times that I've had a client like in a wildly different time zone, like I have one client in Hawaii, which is crazy between Hawaii and the UK, I always send her my calendar and I say, look, if you can't find anything, let me know, because you're probably not going to be able to find anything. And she's very, very grateful for me working weird hours outside of my schedule, because I love working with her and I'd love to accommodate her, but that's not something I make a habit of. It's only for special instances. What about cancellations and refunds? That's another thing that we really need to have boundaries on.
Yes. Generally, as a rule, I have a no refund policy.
Yeah, me too.
I say as a rule because, if something, life happens and I'm not a monster, and I am, somebody who has deep empathy. So if somebody's going through some real heavy stuff, then I'm open to a discussion around it.
Yeah.
Similarly with rescheduling, if somebody is going through some real heavy stuff, then obviously, I will do whatever I can to make, to accommodate that. If somebody is repeatedly cancelling, then no, because that's my time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I probably, if I had a client that was repeatedly late or canceling, I would not renew a contract with them or work with them in the future, because that's just too stressful.
And there's something about, so I have it in my coaching agreement, and I have a bit of a behavioural contracting conversation with people when I first start working with them around roles and responsibilities and what I promise and what I expect from them, and what I will and what I won't do. And so one of the things that I have a boundary around is I won't chase my clients.
Yeah.
It's up to them to book the session. It's up to them to schedule it. It's up to them to show up. It's up to them to raise any issues if they have with the coaching. Because, if you get to the end of a coaching program, we talked about this, about cancellations and guarantees as well, why I don't offer a guarantee. Yeah. Because if you feel at some point that the coaching isn't going the way that you want it to, or you're not getting the support, then my approach is, this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is an adult to adult relationship.
Yes. And I do not treat my clients like children.
No, exactly. So I won't chase you. I won't be constantly checking in and asking how you are. I give you the I go with the assumption that you are a competent, whole, okay adult, as in, I'm okay, you're okay, adult, and that you will raise issues with me appropriately. And then, of course, I will be flexible. I say that in my contracting. If something's not working for you, raise it with me, and I will be as accommodating as I can to, in discussion, come up with a solution that's going to work. Don't wait till the end of the 6 months of the coaching to then say, that didn't work for me.
Yes, exactly. Because what can you do now?
And that's only ever happened once, that somebody has said, I'm not happy, I want a refund, and that was my response, because that's no way to run a business.
So what about people who are late for calls? How long do you wait for people?
Generally 5 to 10 minutes. Ooh. I mean, we're always, stuff happens. If somebody messages me and says, I'm stuck in traffic, or, I was 5 minutes late to a call today because I had a phone call from, my son's college, and I thought, oh goodness, what might this be? And it turned out it was something and nothing, but it was, 5 minutes, no problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I am sat at my desk and I'm getting on with some stuff, then I'll maybe, do it a little bit longer.
Mhm.
I generally will email somebody or message somebody and say, hey, would you have a call? Is everything okay?
Mhm.
But yeah, after 15 minutes,
Yeah.
because also the way that I work, there's not that much that we could get
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
in a shorter session. So yeah, it's yeah. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a 15-minute maximum limit,
Mm-hmm.
except for discovery calls or intake calls or short calls where I wait 10 minutes.
Right.
And I'll message the person and be like, hey, are you still okay for a call now? If I don't hear from them, then at the 15-minute point or the 10-minute point, depending on what kind of call it is, I'll just message them again, say, hey, I hope everything is okay with you. I'm getting offline now. And then I get off of Skype. Because I need to get on with things, and I can't actually get anything else done if I'm half waiting for a call.
Yeah.
I need to refocus my brain on something else, and I can't do that if I'm in two places at once.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So what about how to know, what are your boundaries around who to work with or who you will work with and who you won't work with?
Again, I think this is something that you develop the confidence for, about
Yeah.
whether somebody's going to be a good fit. And again, it's one of those things that we all tend to learn the hard way.
Exactly. It's trial and error.
Yeah. So you have the couple of clients who just go, oh my God, they were such hard work.
Yes.
And when you think back, you kind of think, yeah, I knew kind of right at the beginning there was something off, that this wasn't going to work. So, yeah, having that develops over time. But I also guess I'm at the point in my business now when I know I don't have to work with everybody.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm quite happy to say to somebody, either I don't think I'm the right person for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're at the right stage in your business, but come back in, after you've done this and this or whatever, or I'll refer somebody or there has been occasions when I've said, I'm not sure if I'm the right person, let's have a chat.
Yeah.
I need to find out a little bit more, because then I do occasionally do work that isn't, I'm working with somebody at the moment, it's more of a career coaching issue. This person isn't a coach, they couldn't be more different from a coach.
Yeah.
But they contacted me, they were already familiar with my work, and we had a chat, and I thought, let's give this a go, let's try it. But yeah, I think the boundary for me is how long somebody been in business, are values aligned, do I think they're ready to actually do the work? And there's a number of things that goes into the decision. And I know that when I'm talking to kind of people who are just starting out their business, and I explain that a discovery call is a two-way thing. It's for you to be, and they're like, yeah. How do I get them to say yes? It's like, no, that's not what you're wanting, because you will have those situations where they say yes, and you've not even thought about whether they're a good fit, or they turn out to be really, really difficult to work with. You learn the hard way.
So speaking of difficult people, what about boundary pushers? Because some people will naturally respect your boundaries, and some people will kind of push back and see if they can get what they want anyway.
Yeah, I have to say this is something that I've had to lean into, because I struggle with that, because I'm like, I don't quite know what to do with this. My two mastermind buddies who, I've mentioned before, we meet once a week. We speak daily a lot of the time. One of them is excellent at boundaries, like exquisite at it. Has formally trained in doing boundary work.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, she's really great for sometimes giving me the wording, or you need to put a boundary in here. Around stuff like that. It's something that I'm learning to do better with. I probably shouldn't be saying this publicly, because I'll get a lot of people pushing boundaries.
Push my boundaries. Give me a chance to learn some more.
But the way that I now view it is that each time that happens, it's an opportunity for me to grow. Again, people out there thinking, "Oh, I'm going to give Joe an opportunity to grow here." Please don't do that, because it helps you to redefine, or sometimes to initially define, what are my boundaries around this? Yeah. So if somebody says, oh, I can't do any evening, will you do a Sunday call? And I'm like, will I do a Sunday? No, I won't. Or will you come and do this speaking event? There's no money. the people in the audience aren't remotely your ideal clients.
Yeah.
But I'd really, I had an event, an instance late last year when somebody had contacted me. It was somebody local, and they did the whole, it's based on generosity. It would be so good if you would do this. We'd be so grateful. And I was like, well, yeah, but this is going to take like almost a whole day for me to do, and I must have had 7 or 8 emails off this person. And at first I was kind of negotiating with them, kind of go, well, maybe I could come along for an hour, and then it was, well, will you promote the event? And eventually I was thinking, I'm getting nothing out of this. It's going to take a whole day. And so it took a while for me to actually go back and say, no, I can't do it. Again, you learn from it. So it's something I'm getting better at, definitely. How about you? I imagine you're a lot better at this than I am.
Yeah,
Yes, I am.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Like my boundaries were so bad in my first business that I think they're so good in this business. So generally speaking, when I'm clear on my boundaries, I don't have problems with boundary pushers. I have had, I was just thinking of a time where I've had 2 refund requests in my entire business. So one was from an online course. From my very first online course that I did, it was a social media course. It was this guy who signed up. I emailed him, every week about the class. He never showed up for any of the calls, never showed up for the Facebook group, never showed up for anything. And I had a 30-day money back guarantee. Never heard from him. I kept emailing him saying, are you okay? Like, are you getting this? Nothing. 6 months later, from the same email that I had been emailing him, he writes to me and he says, I'm doing my taxes. I'm looking at my receipts and payments and things, and I see that I paid for this course, which I never took. I want my money back. And I was like, no. It was a 30-day money back guarantee. I made it, like, I contacted you so many times. Like, it was like I don't remember how long the course was, but it was an 8-week course. Plus I had bonus weeks. Like, that guy got at least 15 emails from me saying, this is the course stuff. So I really don't, no. So, and then the other time was for a package, and I'm not happy with how I handled this. This woman signed up for my 3-session package. After the first session, came back a few days later, asked for a refund because it wasn't what she expected, which was really odd considering the fact that she did the same technique that I was using at the time. So it was like, what were you expecting? Anyway, I should have just picked up the phone and had a chat with her, but instead I tried to do it over email because I was kind of freaking out about it. Ended up giving her a full refund and not feeling good about it. So yeah, that was kind of my 2 boundary pushers. That's not that big a deal.
So in terms of boundary pushers, what about the people who just want to pick your brain?
I don't get that.
Really?
Yeah. No one wants to pick my brain.
Pick Holly's brain. She has a great brain.
Yeah, I don't. That's so interesting because I see people complaining about that all the time. I don't know whether my boundaries are so clear that people are terrified to, like, contact me, or they don't give a shit about my brain and what it has to offer. But yeah, I don't get that kind of boundary pusher. I mean, every once in a while I get people like emailing me with like a question, and it's something that I can answer quickly and be like, hey, this and that. But yeah, I don't really have that problem.
That's really interesting. So I mean, I don't get it that often. I will sometimes get emails from people, and sometimes people will message me on Facebook and things. And it basically depends on the relationship that I have with them. If they're genuinely a friend, if there's somebody that, it's a 2-way relationship that I have with, I'm usually quite happy to give them, like a bit of advice and stuff like that. If it's somebody that I don't have that relationship with, though, what I've become a lot better at is, this is a great question. I may well, here's a link to my Facebook group. I may well do a Facebook Live or a blog post around it. Similarly with people who email me about stuff. apart from the ones that are really kind of off the wall, you're just like, I have no idea where you would buy the microphone that you need for the, sometimes I got a couple of bizarre ones, but yeah, I've got a lot better at it. I know that Marie Forleo did a really good Marie TV video around how to handle boundary pushes, and maybe we can link to in the show.
Oh yeah, I will definitely. Okay, so I know this is getting really, really long, but I feel like this is really important stuff for us to be saying, like the conversation for us to be having. Two last things. One is what you're willing to debate and what you're not willing to debate.
Yes.
And I think this is a really important one that a lot of people don't think about. So when we were chatting about this before we got on the recording, one of the things that I said was I have this YouTube video that's got 61,000 views now. So it's obviously getting out there to a much wider audience than people who normally know me. And it's about how to use self-muscle testing, or how to do self-muscle testing. So in the beginning, it's YouTube. So I got a bunch of comments, people saying this is bullshit, whatever. And I finally I've added to the description of this video over the years. It's been, I think, 2 years since I did the video. And one of the things that I say is I'm not willing to debate whether or not this is a valid thing. If it works for you, great. If you think it's BS, great. I'm not going to debate this with you. And since then, I haven't had people, popping in saying this is all a bunch of crap. So and I don't know if that's because just the energy is out there around that video that I'm not going to debate, or whether people are actually reading the description, which I doubt. But maybe it's something about how I'm putting myself out there now, saying, if this works for you, great. If it doesn't, I'm not going to debate this with you. Yeah. So what about you?
Well, I again, for me, this has been a learning curve, something that I've got a lot better at over the years. But the phrase "no" is a complete sentence kind of blew my mind when I first heard it, because I was like, "What, really?" Because I think one of the ways that boundary pushers operate, and some people are doing it quite innocently, and some people are doing it quite deliberately. There's a way of kind of, when persuasion goes to intimidation and manipulation, that happens, in business, that happens outside of business. We're just looking at the moment of the whole Harvey Weinstein thing coming up, and a person who refused to take no and would badger and berate people until try to break them down. And I think that there is because of a lot of our conditioning, obviously I talk about feminine conditioning a lot, I think a lot of our conditioning as women tends to be around looking after other people's feelings. That there's a tendency to want to debate or to explain or to mollify or to allow somebody to feel that they've been heard and that they're important to us, and that actually that can take a huge amount of energy. So there are some things I'm not willing to debate. I'm not willing to debate feminism. Occasionally I'll get somebody who will, oh, so you're a feminist then, so that means blah blah blah, and I tune out, because it's like, I'm not even willing to discuss it, because my definition of feminism may well be different to yours. I don't care. Go read a book on it. That is not my fight to have.
And there's not one definition that works for the entire world either. So figure out what yours is and deal with it.
Exactly. It's not my job to educate you. It's not my job to debate with you. And I think that's something that my boundaries have got much better around. And I think it's almost like survival skills 101 for operating on the internet. Do not fall down the rabbit hole of debating stuff with people.
It's just a waste of time. So to wrap this up, you touched on this a little bit at the start, but what is some of the mindset stuff that gets in the way of setting clear boundaries and upholding clear boundaries?
I think one of the things is not consciously fully being aware of the fact that we have a right to set boundaries.
Yes.
We have a right to them. It's not
Yeah.
just they're a good thing to do. We have a right, then we have a right to say no. We have a right to, we're running our own businesses. So, we nobody's telling us what to do.
Yeah.
You don't have a boss. Literally, no one is the boss of you. So you have a right to set the boundaries that work for you.
Yeah.
You have a right to not take responsibility for other people's feelings.
Yeah.
We're responsible for our own reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those two things are really super useful when you go into this. And then also, good boundaries help you to show up at your best.
Yes.
Because protecting your time, protecting your energy means that the precious gift that you have, which is your healing, your coaching, or whatever your modality is, there's more of it.
Yeah.
And it's more what's the opposite of dilute?
Intense,
That's it,
intensified,
Yes.
concentrated.
Concentrated. That's the word. It's just more concentrated, and you have the good stuff to be able to deliver, and you get to maintain your life force. Because if we don't, if we're just depleted all the time because we've got crappy boundaries, then that takes its toll after a while. That's not sustainable, and we're in the business of helping people build sustainable businesses. Financially, energetically, emotionally, all of that stuff. So boundaries are essential. They are the scaffold that allow us to do that.
They are. And, I think it's important to identify anything that's getting in the way of you creating clear boundaries, whether it's what will people think? Will they think I'm, a bad person? Will they think I'm, too good for them? What will people say about me? Will people post things on the internet? Will people complain? Will people talk to each other? Like whatever stuff is coming up for you, whatever fears, get clear on that and then clear that crap, because it's really important to have clear boundaries, and you need to get rid of anything that's getting in the way of you not only creating them but upholding them.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things that people might have around boundaries is, what will they think of me?
Yes, yeah. And and again, this is a theme that runs through our work and comes up time and time again, is that not everyone is going to like you. We all want to be liked. And I think because, especially we're operating in this online world where we have so many examples of, people's reputations being trashed and things like that, it can sometimes be scary. But the fact is, not everybody is going to like you. People will disagree with you. They are not your clients. They are not your people.
Yeah.
Your people will respect your boundaries.
Yes.
Your people will benefit from your boundaries. And so when we stop trying to do the impossible, which is appeal to everyone, that's when we can actually start to thrive in our businesses and as ourselves.
Yeah. I'm so glad we had this conversation. I think this is really important stuff to be talking about. And I think it's really important stuff for other people to hear so that they can reevaluate their boundaries and see whether or not they're serving them or whether they need to be updated and upgraded to something that helps them become a better entrepreneur.
Absolutely. There is one fantastic resource that I want to give around boundaries. So there's a coach called Randy Buckley who has a program called Healthy Boundaries for Kind People and a sister program called Healthy Boundaries for Kind People in Business.
Oh.
And she, her blog is great. She writes really eloquently about this stuff from a perspective of, you're a kind person. You want to be kind. You want to be, leading from love and all of that stuff. And so we can sometimes struggle with boundaries. So I will link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah,
Hers
definitely.
is great. And the other thing that I just want to kind of leave people with is, when I used to work in organizations, in corporate, I would sometimes go to the other, because I used to run things like, assertiveness courses and resilience courses, and it tended to be a lot of women like me who weren't naturally, who did worry about what people thought of them, who did want to be, who were naturally kind of kind and compassionate and wanted to see the best in people. And then I would also do things like I do coaching with managers who were, struggling with their teams and things like that. And invariably, I would come across the arseholes.
Yeah.
And so I remember one guy in particular had such rigid boundaries. He was a total pain in the arse to his whole team. But you know what? He left at 5:00 every day. He took an hour for his lunch. He got all of his emails done. He was the least stressed person that I'd come across in there. And so one of the things that it kind of, this penny dropped. I remember saying on an assertiveness course I was running for a group of women, we can learn a lot from the arseholes. We don't have to be them, but we can steal some of their tricks. Yeah. So one of the things this guy would do is he would have this rigid boundary of no one disturbs me before 10 a.m. because that's when I'm planning my day and I'm doing my emails. And it was like, oh, okay, but you could do that without being an arse.
Yeah, exactly.
So I could actually learn that. I could implement that. If I say I'm going to leave at a certain time, I can implement that, and I can do that without being an arse. So sometimes look at the people in your life you just think they are an arsehole, but do you know what? They have really good boundaries.
Yeah.
and steal some of their tricks. Just
without the you don't have to take the whole package.
Yeah. I think that's everything I have to say on the subject. I think so. Now.
And I think this has been a great episode, so I really hope our listeners agree, because this is important stuff.
It is. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks, Holly. I always enjoy talking to you about this stuff. I feel like, we get to unpack and redefine our own feelings about stuff and our own thoughts about stuff. So this is always really useful for me to do as well. But I hope that you've got some things out of it and learned from the benefit of our experience if you're listening to this. And let us know, what areas you struggle with when it comes to boundaries, or, what will people think of me, or any of those things.
Excellent.
Okay. We'll speak to you soon.
And I hope you found this episode interesting and useful. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought of it. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and get in touch there. I would also love to see you in my private Facebook group, Business Mindset Alchemists, so we can continue the conversation there. I am aware that podcasting is very much a one-way conversation, and I don't like that. So I would love to hear from you, hear what you think about it, get some feedback in the group. So if you're interested, you can head over to hollywharton.com/group, and you'll be redirected to the Facebook group where you can join. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on iTunes. It would really mean the world to me. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/225 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for the topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and learn more about business mindset, join my private community for entrepreneurs at hollywharton.com/group. That will redirect you to the Facebook group. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you so much.